Where do you spend your efforts? Where do you invest your time? Do you invest it on big things like changing the way you run your business, or renaming your business, rebranding if you like, uh, or thinking about promoting your brand? Or do you spend it on little things that may not be of vast importance at first sight but make a big difference? Because very often little things do make a big difference, and all I'm going to talk about now is little things that make a big difference. Okay? And I'm going to give you one example where my partner did something behind my back. I didn't know it was happening. I only noticed it when I was going on the internet, and the reason that you're watching this is that almost certainly that at some time you subscribed to my helpful ideas, and we run little ads that offer the helpful ideas. And one day, must have been about a year ago, I suddenly saw that the copy had changed. The copy used to say Drayton bird, capital D, capital B, blah, 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 blah. Suddenly I noticed that the copy was reading Drayton with a small d and bird with a small b. Yeah? And I rang up my partner and I said, what are you doing? That's not correct. He said, well, I've tested it. It gets more response. And when we say more response, I'm just going to, very often, in most of, not all of these cases, I'm going to quote you figures, because figures cannot lie, right? They're very, very indicative of the truth. We were paying £2.34 to get a lead when it was all capitals, and when we changed it to lowercase, it suddenly went down to £1.69. Which would you prefer to pay? And all the things I'm going to talk to you about are fairly simple things like that. Are you using autoresponders? And if you don't know what an autoresponder is, let me tell you, it's something that's preloaded on your series of emails so that it goes out, they go out one after another, one after another, one after another, one after another. There are two benefits of this. Number one, it makes your life a lot easier because they're loaded up. You know, they're just going to go out like an automatic machine gun. Number two, the way that you use autoresponders is you go through all the emails that you've sent out in the past and you look at the ones that have done best and you put them in order of success. And when you get a new email, because you keep on trying new things, and you get another one that hits the spot, you load that on. You should try an autoresponder, because that sort of thing can improve your response to an extraordinary degree. And I'm looking down because I'm looking to see what figures that we found. We found they actually double response. I'm talking to you now at the end of November, and we started using autoresponders on one of the things that I sell, and I'll give you the exact figures. In October we made 19 sales. In November we've made 40 sales. Give it a go. Have you tried using remarketing? That's the system whereby when people show an interest in something, you can make sure that they're followed around by your ad, your message, as they go around the internet. That can increase your response by a good 30%. Here's something else for you. Did you know that 95% of the people in the world do not have English as their first language? The logic of that means you should translate things if you're appealing to people in countries where they don't speak English as their first language. In fact, translating has been found to, in some cases, to increase response by 400%. Worth knowing. Later on today, or tomorrow, I can't remember because I do a lot of interviews, I'm interviewing and being interviewed by a man who's invented, or certainly popularized, a certain type of video. It's one of those videos where you see all the words that are being spoken running along the bottom of the screen. They are extraordinarily successful. Have you tried it? I'll be putting out this interview, so after you receive this, keep your eye open for that interview. It's with a guy called John Benson. That may be worth watching. There is another type of video that works extremely well, and you probably will have seen it, and I'm going to test that too. I haven't interviewed the guy who's invented it because I don't actually know who did. And it's one of those things where you see a hand drawing something on a screen, very, very quick cartoons. I know it works because one of my clients in Philadelphia uses it, I don't know how well it works. It seems to be very hard work to put the script together because I've been working on this for about a month, but I'm going to try it. Again, this is the whole underlying message I'm trying to give you is try things, try things, try things. So that's one of the things you should try. And here's one reason why you should try it. Just a plain video, just me talking to you now on a website, for instance, makes a huge difference. I once took £20,000 for an event I was running, and £20,000 worth of bookings from some videos that I made on the fly, as they say, outside Exeter Cathedral. I just went outside Exeter Cathedral and I was filmed making very, very short videos. None of them was more than 2 minutes long. I used about 15 of them, and they filled up this event. Videos, again, I'm looking down to see the figures because I'm constantly followed around by figures, shadowy figures. Videos, the last figures I saw from anybody were an increase of 2.1% response up to 6.9% response. That's 321%. Wouldn't you like 321%? All you have to do is to sit like this, like me, and do a video. Don't do a fancy video, don't do one with lots of a Hollywood number. That will actually work worse. And that's another hint for you. Sincerity will always beat fancy production values. Many years ago, I worked with a man called Alvin Eichhoff. Alvin Eichhoff from Chicago was the king of the late night commercials. You know, the commercials where you'd see people go on and on and on and on and on forever selling something. And one of his clients was Time Life Books, at that time one of the biggest advertisers in the world, certainly in the direct marketing world. And they used to keep on saying to him, please Al, will you run some videos with nice production values, beautifully produced? And he would oblige, and they would spend a lot of money, and they all failed. So don't forget that sincerity beats fancy production values. Here's another example. This morning, one of my partners rang me up, and yesterday he tried a test. He said, shall we try this? And I said, why not? What can you lose? And can I say something to you? Why not are two of the most valuable words in the English language. Most people just don't try things enough. And he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send out my normal email at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm going to send out a follow-up at 10 o'clock in the evening to the people who didn't reply. So I said, give it a go. And I'll tell you what happened. He got 2 replies to his normal one, which he sent out at 10 o'clock, and he got 5 more in the evening. I don't know why, but maybe you do. Maybe it's because all of us just get too many emails. Maybe it's because some people are in one time zone and some people are in another. But you'll never know what happens until you try. So let's go to a few more things that I've found make a lot of difference. Do you send people to your website, or do you send them to what we call a landing page or a squeeze page? Because if you're sending them to your website, you're probably losing money when you should be sending them to a landing page. What's a landing page? It's one of these long things, if you don't know, which goes on and on and on very often, which has no links to anything outside. So if you go onto a website, you've done it yourself. You go onto somebody's website, you see something that's interesting, and then that's interesting, and you go somewhere else, and then you go somewhere else, and then you go somewhere else, and before you know where you are, you're on the other side of the world, quite possibly, reading about something totally different. So a website is a bit like a field without a fence around it. Yeah, a landing page is something where people can't go anywhere else. They've got to go down. They've either got to leave or keep going. You will find that more profitable, a lot more profitable. Have you ever tested typefaces? It is a bizarre fact, and I honestly don't know why, but the old typeface Courier, or in America it's American Typewriter, which looks like an old typewriter face, generally will outperform any other face that you use in print. I haven't tested it in email. Why did it work? I don't know. I do know that I tried it for one of my clients here in Bristol, the biggest firm in their field, and it increased response by between 30 and 60% in a series of tests. You don't have to know why something works to find it worth trying. Try it and see what happens. On that same subject, one marketer reported that using Tahoma in their emails for the subject line and also for the headline increased response by 14%. Now 14% doesn't sound very much, but let me ask you something. If you were to get 14% more sales in your business over the next year, what would happen to you? You'd be a happy bunny, wouldn't you? How do you send out your emails? A lot of people, I would say most of the emails that I receive are HTML. In other words, they've got pictures and this, that and the other. They're like leaflets, really. They're not like personal communications. You will very, very rarely get anything from me that is not in text, because text is more personal. Just as in a mailing pack, a letter is the most important element. In an email, the personal element, the text bit, that's the most important element. Do you use direct mail? Do you use direct mail? If you do use direct mail, then it will not have escaped your notice that the first thing people see is an envelope. And when they see the envelope, they, as quick as a flash, when you see an envelope, you decide, I'm going to open this envelope, or I'm not going to open this envelope. And if you're not, you put it on a pile on your table, and I have a pile of mail here that I haven't opened. You want to make sure that your envelope is on the pile that people open. Number one, do try putting a message on the envelope, and do try and make sure it's a message which doesn't reveal everything, that just gives you some hint of what's coming your way, doesn't tell you everything. Number two, try a different size envelope. One of these big envelopes instead of the normal business size envelope will make a difference. Using a longer envelope will make a difference. Using an envelope that's a different colour, particularly yellow, will make a difference. Using an envelope that's textured, a texture that people can feel, that has been known to increase response by as much as 93%. Try that sort of thing. Here's another little snippet. Do you know what the world's favourite hobby is? What do you think? I often ask people this and I say, oh, it's gardening or fishing or whatever it is. I said, no, it isn't, it's watching other people. Yeah? You love watching people. People watching, you sit there and you look at them. And one of the reasons is that people look at people. Babies, for instance. So here's something. If you've got a baby, or you know somebody who's got a baby, take a sheet of paper like this, yeah, and draw two little round dots on it, yeah, big round dots, just like a pair of eyes, and put it in front of a young baby, and that baby will smile. Yeah, we are conditioned to react to the human face. What am I trying to tell you? I'm trying to tell you, put faces in your ads, put faces on your landing pages, put faces. The number of times I see somebody's website with no face on the front page, it's bloody madness, yeah? I can tell you that simply putting a face on the top of a letter will increase response by as much as 20%, so there's something else for you. This morning I received an email from somebody who was trying to sell an event, and at the top of the email there was a series of faces that you must have seen 1,000 times before, of typical business people grinning at you rather foolishly, or looking important, or doing that sort of thing. Don't do that sort of thing. It immediately signals to people that you're a phony. You know, it's not the real thing. You have to try and be real in your communications. I'm going to tell you a couple more things. One quite detailed, actually two quite detailed, both quite interesting, and just one piece about where you go for business online. Google have dominated online. The name is so almost synonymous with it that everyone immediately talks about Google ads and blah 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 blah, and they forget that there is another thing which is infinitely bigger than Google, which is the content network, 100 times bigger. Don't just pin all your hopes on Google. Look into the content network and see what you can get by advertising there. Actually, I said I was going to promise you 2 things. I'm going to give you 3 things. For God's sake, do test. I just don't understand why people don't use Google for testing or anything for testing online. One of the great nightmares, or not nightmares, but one of the frustrations when everything was done in print was it would take maybe 6 weeks from the time that a client briefed me to write some copy to the time that it actually ran, and then another few weeks, at least 2 weeks, before we knew which one of 2 alternatives, A or B, or C for that matter, was doing better. It took a long time. But I can have an idea in the morning and I can test it the same day and know the answer. Earlier on in this little video, I quoted an example of my partner who had this idea of sending out 1 email at 10 in the morning, 1 in 10 at night. Well, I can tell you how long it took us to carry out this experiment. He told me about it yesterday and he ran it. I tell you a lie. He told me about it the day before yesterday. He ran it first at 10 o'clock yesterday morning, so he knew how many replies he got. And then he ran it at 10 o'clock at night. And this morning he rang me up and he told me what the results were. Not 6 weeks or 7 weeks, just 24 hours. Less than 48 hours between the 2. For God's sake, run some tests. You can do it quickly, you can do it cheaply. You can find out the answer, and every time you gain an answer, you gain knowledge, and when you gain knowledge, as long as you apply it, you make more money. So here are the last 2 things that I promised I would talk to you about. The first is something very, very old, and it comes from a partner of mine in an agency of which I'm the chairman, which I never visit because, I don't know, every time I visit things go wrong. That's not true, that's not true. But he's a very clever guy, and he told me a story that fascinated me. Now, how many letters do you get with handwriting on them, on the envelope? Not many, yeah. So if you handwrite things, you get higher responses. And my partner had a whole team of women around where his agency is, which is in the depths of the country in Wiltshire, who would hand address things or handwrite things. And these are the results that he got. I mean, they're quite extraordinary. He said, we did a mailing where we hand addressed the letters. So hand addressed the letters, not the envelopes, I think. It doubled our conversion. I think he was already hand addressing the envelopes. So that doubled his sales. So then he thought, this is great. And he was doing this in his own office. Then he outsourced. So he went outside to people and got them to do it. But this time, it halved the response. And he discovered the reason was they went to find out what was going on. They went to find the lady who was actually doing the handwriting. And she smoked cigarettes at a tremendous rate, 40 or 50 a day. So all the letters stunk of cigarettes. That killed response. I don't know what use that is to you. No, seriously, try hand addressing and try hand addressing, saying dear so-and-so, yeah? Handwriting really works. And here's the last thing I'm going to tell you, and it's about the most important element in persuasion. The most important element in persuasion, believe you me, is emotion. No matter what people do, in almost every field I can think of, I can't think of one where it's not true. They are governed by their emotions, not by logic. But very often, particularly in things to do with money, people are very, very logical. You know, accountants tend to be very logical. There's an old joke about an actuary being an accountant, but without the sense of emotion. People think money is a very logical thing, but I often point out in seminars that don't think of money as just being very logical and cold. People kill for money. Yeah? So when you start talking about money, start getting emotional. And one of the things that really works well when you're using emotion is if you can immediately say something, paint a picture that people can relate to. So here's some copy that was written by my partner, no longer with me, but doing much better with someone else. And this is how our copy begins. The heading was How to Retire at 55. And you might like to know that that particular headline has been running, to my certain knowledge, for at least 70 years under various guises. It was originally run by John Caples in the 1920s, and it was How to Retire at 50. But this is how the copy opens. Stuck on an overcrowded train to work at 6 a.m. with your neighbour's umbrella dripping on your paper, do you ever think, I can't wait to stop working? Do you ever daydream about lions, long holidays and neglected hobbies? You see, there's a picture for you. First there's a picture, and then you go straight to the person, to what the person is feeling. And then it goes on, early retirement doesn't come cheap, so how could you afford it? So you've got an emotional statement, a picture, and then the problem summed up again. You know, you've said how to retire, that's the problem, and then said it doesn't come cheap, you repeat the problem, then you say, so how could you afford it? And you're saying to the reader, I'm about to give you the answer. And that is what our business is all about. Marketing is extremely simple. Please remember this. Marketing is, you have a problem, I can solve it, do this. Yeah. Well, if your business is already doing extremely well, maybe this can help you do a little bit better. If it's not doing as well as you like, the same thing applies. But whether you're doing very well or not so well, and you want to do better, I promise, in fact I guarantee, I give a money back guarantee, that if you come to EADIM next October, you will do even better, however you're doing now. And you'll do very well immediately because you'll save £900 off the cost of EADIM. But this offer ends at midnight on Saturday, November the 30th. Midnight, Saturday, November the 30th. And I will make no excuse right now for saying that I'm going to remind you about that before it happens, in every way I can think of it. Because you want to succeed and I want you to succeed. And you will succeed the more you know. Thanks for joining me. November the 30th.